Do you wish you could find an Atty that had the flavour of a dripper? The huge cloud production of a sub-ohm tank was ultra reliable and also easy to build on. Hard luck, because there's no such thing. Oh, hang on, no, there is. It's called the Billow V2. Hey guys, welcome to a new gear review here on Vape Off Reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at this bad boy. This is the Billow V2. It is a collaboration between the US vaping website and kind of seller of vaping goods, Eciggity, and the well-known manufacturer EHPro. EHPro have brought out a few of their own things lately, but I think they're probably best known for doing some really high quality one-to-one clones of more expensive vaping gear. I'll be doing a bit of an uppy-closey thing with this after it. I'm not going to be doing a rebuild on it. There are loads of videos on YouTube showing good rebuilds. Vic, the good old Scottish vapor Vic, he has a really good review of this where he kind of takes it apart and step by step builds it up. So if that's what you're looking for, then there are loads of those. I will show you it kind of taken apart as it were, but I'm not going to actually be doing a build on it. It is, just to give you a couple of the most important specs, it is a 5 millimeter, sorry, 5 millimeter, I was about to say 5 litre then, that would be great, wouldn't it? 5 milliliter capacity. Okay, it basically, as you'll see, well, you can, I've not got it full at the moment, but you could fill it all the way to the top. It's not like some of these tanks where you can get about half of a tank in and that's your lot. You can fill this thing to the top, basically. You can't really, to be honest, I can't really tell when I'm looking at it, but basically, yeah, the bottom of the tank is 22 millimeter diameter, so it should fit pretty much on anything. The top as well is 22, and then where you've got this glass tank here, it kind of rounds out a bit to 23 millimeters, but like I say, you can't really tell. It's not kind of, you don't look at it and think, oh god, that looks a bit, you know, it looks fine. It has the drip tip that comes with it is kind of a bit of a stubby wide bore drip tip. It has a Delrin base. Okay, so that's going to stop your drip tip from overheating when you're sub-ohming on it. And it also has, I don't know if you can see if this will focus, but it also has an adjustable airflow ring. Okay, with 2 airflow holes, one on each side. And yeah, basically I'll show you it up close and show you what I think is probably the best feature of this tank. Okay, so before we do that, let's have a vape. Lovely, let's go. Okay guys, so here it is, the Billow V2. It's made up of a few separate parts. You've got your detachable stainless steel and Delrin drip tip. Okay, wide bore, of course, as you need. That connects onto a stainless steel top cap with some O-rings here that you can see, and then the chimney inside runs down to the base through this 5 milliliter glass tank. As far as I know, this is glass, not Pyrex, so just be very careful with that. And then down here you have got, the autofocus decides it wants to work, you have got the airflow controller, which kind of looks a bit like a face. And basically you just turn this as you would expect. Now some people have had issues with this kind of being a bit too loose. It's okay for me, but some people it's very loose. And basically if you take out the copper 510 pin, which I think is a non-adjustable pin, if you take that out from the bottom and detach the base from the airflow controller, there is a little screw underneath that you can use to tighten up the control. So if you do have any issues with that, then that's what to do. And you also have the designed by EHPro and Eciggity and the serial number at the bottom. Cool. So basically the reason I've taken this off is to show you what I think is probably the most important feature of this tank. It's something that is a few tanks are doing now. Some are doing top fill with kind of varied success, but this is not a top fill tank. It's also not a bottom fill tank. Okay, it's kind of, well, you'll see. Basically what you can do is you can unscrew the deck and the airflow. Okay, when you do this, keep an eye on this section here. Okay, one of the first times I filled this up, I accidentally unscrewed that at the same time, and it caused the tank to leak like hell. Okay, so when you're turning this, just keep an eye on that ring underneath, and if it starts to move, okay, make sure that you're turning it back. Okay, so basically I can detach the deck section, there we go, without losing the liquid out of the tank. Okay, now this isn't full at the moment, but basically I can put that to one side. Okay, unlike the old K-Fun models and things like that where you had to empty out all the liquid first, I can access the deck without having to do that. Okay, a bit like the K-Fun version 4. Okay, so here we have the kind of metal chimney with a nice drip tip in there. I'm just going to use some tissue to get that off, just because it's a bit too slippery. Okay, and you'll see when that comes off, okay, basically you have, hopefully you can see this, basically you have the two negative posts on the outside, and then you have a kind of a two-part positive post in the middle with Phillips screws. Okay, now one thing, probably one very minor con for me, is that the positive posts are the same height as the negatives. So when you're feeding the coils through, once you've put one of your coils in, because it is a dual coil, once you put one in, it can be a little tricky to get the other coil through the positive post without kind of banging into the coil you've put in. But that said, it's no more difficult than most other devices and drippers that I've used. Okay, so what you can hopefully see here is where the edges of the cotton are sitting, there is a little kind of rectangular hollow just above where those juice channels are. Okay, there's two on the other side as well. Basically what you want to do with this build, when you've got your coils sitting over the wide airflow holes that hopefully you can see just down here, okay, just under the coil. When you've got the coil sitting over there, you want to cut just a small bit of cotton, okay, and when you wet it, you want to make it sit in those rectangular hollows. Okay, you don't want it going down into the juice well here, otherwise you're going to end up with flooding. Okay, but they've designed it so they've got these nice little hollows for you to rest your wick on, which makes it kind of easy to gauge if you've got if your cotton is too long as well. Okay, so I've got a dual coil build in here. What is it? It is 28 gauge Canthal, regular coils, micro coils, 2mm diameter, and it comes out, it's about 8 wraps. It comes out at about 0.7 ohms. Okay, and just a bit of Japanese Muji cotton in here. And so yeah, basically that's the build deck. Okay, now if I can ever get this to focus, what we have, get the billow out of the way, what we have here, okay, when you screw on the chimney, okay, one side has got a black O-ring in it, okay, that goes at the top, and you should be able to screw this on. If you haven't got too much cotton in here and it's not going down into the wells, you should be able to screw that on really easily, and the threading is really good on this. Okay, and you shouldn't be able to see any cotton poking out through those little air holes, those little juice holes, sorry, at the bottom. Okay, now basically all I need to do now is turn this over and put it into the Billow's main body. Now, something else I want to show you actually. When you turn this over, okay, you can see that it has some hollows around the side, and basically when you want to refill this, all you need to do is put the nose, or the dripper, that's the one I was looking for, put the dripper of your bottle into those holes, okay, and just fill it up like that, and the liquid will go straight down, and that's it. That's all you need to do to fill your tank. And then basically to put it back together, you just put this section into the chimney and then screw it a bit to the right until you kind of hear it click into place. Okay, and then just screw it back and make sure it's kind of tight. Another thing you can do, particularly when you put your coils in for the first time, that chimney that goes over the coils and the wick, just give that an extra tighten, because of some people have had issues with that coming off when they have been using or refilling their device. Okay, and that's going to cause your tank to leak. Okay, so if I put the drip tip back on, it is pretty simple to build on, to be fair. Some people have issues with the size of the deck because it is a slightly smaller deck than some of the tanks. But for me, it wasn't too difficult to build on. I find the Magma RDA to be a nightmare for me to build on because it's so small and so fiddly, and it's not too bad. The only thing to bear in mind is that you don't want to use coils that are 3mm or bigger in diameter. 2.5 is what the manual recommends. I've got 2 ohm coils. I've got 2mm diameter coils in here, and that works kind of fine. But yeah, so kind of stick to slightly smaller coils. I don't know if you're going to get your twisted or your Clapton coils or some of the thicker wires in here, because you don't have that much room to deal with. And if you look back at where I showed you the coil and the wick on the deck, once you screw that chimney in, there isn't really much room in there. So smaller coils will work better on here. That's about it for the close-up view. We'll go back up top now and I'll show you how this vapes. Okay guys, right, so I did notice when I brought this up from the up close view that this section at the bottom, just as I mentioned before, had come a bit loose and I had to tighten it back up. So just double check that, you know, when you've turned the tank back up. Generally, if it hasn't leaked juice all over the place and drowned the shit out of your room, then, you know, you're pretty good to go. But do double check it. It was kind of a bit of a confined space where I was trying to get everything in focus, so you know, normally I'm a bit more careful than that. But anyway, yeah, so I've got this on my Cloudpool Mini 30 watt, which has served me very well for a long time now. I'll be getting a better mod soon, but I mean the problem with this is it only goes to 30 watts and only goes down to 0.45 ohms, which doesn't give you much leeway with sub-ohm. And also the annoying connection pin that you know you're constantly having to unscrew because it won't connect with devices. But you know, otherwise it's been good. So I've got this on 30 watts at the moment. It's coming out at 0.71 ohms and 4.61 volts. Okay. Don't know what that pop was all about. Okay, so here we go. Okay, I'm not going to argue with the amount of vapor that's giving off. Like I said, it's a 0.7 ohm dual build, so you know, if you were to push that further down, then obviously you'll get more vapor as the resistance decreases. It's just a basic microcoil with Japanese cotton, so good vapor. This liquid is really sweet. I don't know why. It's not something that happens with all of them. It's just this one that I've tried so far. But anyway, first thing that amazes me with this is the flavour. I mean, I haven't got this much flavour through, I don't think, on anything that I've used so far. My Magma RDA, bearing in mind that that is a dripper that is sold for its flavour, I don't get as much flavour as I do with this. This really packs the flavour in. It is amazing when it comes to flavour. If you're a flavour chaser like I am, then you will get the full flavour of your liquid through this tank. There's no denying that. Clouds, perfectly good. Like I say, if I had a lower resistance and a higher wattage, I could probably kick out bigger clouds. But for me, you know, they're decent where they are anyway. God, that liquid is so sweet. I've still got the taste in my mouth. I don't know if I'm having a little bit of an issue at the moment with this, with it spitting back. Most likely that's something to do with the build I've got in, because you know it wasn't doing that before. So I'm going to reserve judgment on that. I don't think that that's the tank, I hope. So yeah, don't take that necessarily to be indicative of the tank. You can run pretty much any juice on this. I probably wouldn't go for a really high PG because it will give you it'll be like being kicked in the throat by a horse. But yeah, basically, I mean, this is 50/50 liquid I've got in at the moment, and it's wicking and it's vaping fine. I've tried 60 VG and 70 VG. I've not tried 100, but I've heard from plenty of people that it does work fine. I've had 0 dry hits. Yay. The only time it leaked really was when I'd unscrewed that bottom part. So other than that, when it's been built up properly, I haven't had any issues with it leaking. So no dry hits, no leaking, great flavour, plenty of vapour. What more can you ask for? Yeah, I'm really impressed with it, and it is just a really brilliantly performing tank. It's reliable. I like the look of it personally. It just does its job really well. I mean, I've tried so many different tanks that just didn't perform well, or they leaked all the time, or getting the build on them was a nightmare. The deck is a bit small on this, which makes it a tiny bit fiddly, but from my experience it's easier to build on than a Magma. The downside, as we saw in the close-up shot, was that the positive section is the same height as the negatives, which makes it a little bit difficult to get your second coil through. But I didn't really have any major issues with that, so it's not really worth mentioning. Haven't really had many issues in terms of screws backing out or anything. When you're putting the chimney on top of the coil build on the deck, make sure to give it a bit of an extra tight screw around with your hand. That sounds wrong. Just because of some people have had leaking issues when the chimney has come loose, or not the chimney, the cylindrical cap, whatever. But yeah, it's a really well performing tank. There isn't much more to say about it. This is a box you get it in. So you've got the design on the front, you've got your number at the back that you can check on the website to check that it's genuine. Okay, that slips off. You get a couple of extras in here. You do of course get your little screwdriver. No Rebuildable would be complete without one. You get a little bag of spare O-rings, and there's a couple of spare screws there for the deck. You also get some organic cotton. It does have the little bits in it. So yeah, it is organic cotton. You get a couple of coils as well, but they look like at least 3mm, so I wouldn't really want to put those in. I don't know why they've made the coil so big in there. And yeah, you get your manual, which has lots of nice colour pictures in. I do sound a bit like a child, but it is nice to get colour pictures in your manual. Plenty of detail, plenty of pictures. Okay, so as manuals go, particularly from a Chinese company, this is pretty solid. I don't know if that's because of they were working with a US seller, but yeah, nothing wrong with what's in there. You don't get a spare glass tank, which might have been nice. You don't get any, well, there are no, you can't put, well, you do get the coils, I suppose. There are no kind of pre-built whole coils for this tank, so you wouldn't get those. But yeah, it might have been nice to have gotten another tank, but for $24.99, you can't really argue with it. I think it's about £5 for a replacement tank, and they are available, so it's not a huge issue. But yeah, so that's the contents of the box for you anyway. If I just do a couple of pros and cons, probably already covered them, to be honest. In terms of pros, the flavour production is top notch. Plenty of vapour coming through. It's reasonably easy to build on. It's pretty much foolproof. You have those little juice wells that we saw where you put your cotton just on the top in the little hollow, and as long as you do that, you're fine. I've tried this with a thin bit of cotton and with a slightly thicker. As long as it's not kind of strangling the coil, it is pretty foolproof. I haven't really had a bad build. You can have obviously a good build and a much better one, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get the perfect build, but generally it works really well, even with a quick rough build. So it's not difficult, I don't think, to build on, and yeah, it's just a really reliable device. It ticks all those boxes. I like the look of it. Like I say, it's quite a nice design. The airflow is good. It gives you plenty of airflow. If you're looking for a ridiculously wide airflow, you're probably not going to get that here. But for a kind of sub-ohm tank build, it does give a decent amount of airflow. And yeah, I like the fact as well that it has a Delrin base to the drip tip, which is going to stop your drip tip from getting ridiculously hot like you get with a lot of sub-ohm tanks. Theoretically, you could build this to be a non-sub-ohm. There's no reason you can't go above 1 ohm, and I imagine it would still give a cracking vape. I might have to try that at some point, but it does work really well suburban as well. Um, in terms of cons, I mean, another pro, of course, is the price. I paid £24.99 for this, and for a tank that performs this well, it's kicked my original K-Fun completely up the arse, and that's a device that cost well over 150 quid, whatever it was at the time. So for the price, it's a really, really cracking tank. In terms of cons, well, I would say first of all, you do have to be careful with that section there. It's quite easy to unscrew that, but generally when you're refilling the tank or you're changing the deck, you've got it upside down anyway, so it's not such a huge issue, and you can sort that easily enough. Like I say, I'm having a bit of a spit back issue with it, but I don't know if that is the tank. It's hard really to find cons for this, because for the price that it is, it performs really solidly. What is there really? It holds a huge amount of juice. It doesn't seem at 0.7 ohms to really drain it that fast. It will drain your juice, but it's not too bad. I don't know, the only con I can think of for some people, I guess, is that the deck is quite small, so 3mm or bigger coils aren't really going to fit there without probably shorting out on the cone, not the cone, the cylindrical bit, whatever you call that. Some people might find it a little bit fiddly because it's got the small deck. Apart from that, which I don't find to be a huge issue, there isn't really anything I can fault with this. It is a brilliant tank. I would definitely, I would go and get another one if something happened to this. I kind of like the fact that the tank is glass, although I can see that being an issue, in terms of breakability. I don't know why they haven't opted for a Pyrex tank. I'm pretty sure it's glass anyway. I don't think it's Pyrex. But, it's fallen over a couple of times for me from a very small height onto a table or something, and it hasn't caused any issues. So it's probably pretty solid glass, to be fair. I'm kind of clutching at straws here because it's hard to find something to fault with this. At this point, I am really, really happy with this tank. So, if you are looking for a tank which can give you plenty of vapour, but also give you an incredible flavour that rivals most of the drippers out there, this is a great one to go for. And for around £25, you can't go wrong. So it gets a thumbs up from me. That's about all that I can say about it, to be fair. Hopefully this hasn't been too choppy. I've had to record a few bits back over again because of some issues with the camera, typically. But yeah, great tank. Definitely recommend it. So if you're in the market for one, I would pick one of these up without a doubt. They must sell like hotcakes, these. Do hotcakes sell well? I've always heard that phrase. I have no idea. But great tank. Highly recommended. So go pick one up. And I think all that remains to be said, other than having another quick vape, I don't know why that's popping so much. That hasn't been happening until now. Strange. If that liquid wasn't so sweet. Yeah, it is a brilliant tank. Go pick one up. That's all there is to it. Happy vaping.